Welcome to Focus on Claims.
All right, welcome back. Ernie here with another episode of Focus on Claims. I got an interesting episode today. It's in the world of construction defect. It's an area I absolutely know nothing about. I'm in the auto claims world. But I wanted to invite Richard and Alan on from AMPR Consulting to talk about kind of an area that I've heard about. And I've heard about construction defect. And I've heard about it can be a nightmare. You have attorneys involved and policyholders and years to get something resolved. You may have an apartment complex or some building where it's got leaky walls or a cracked foundation, and it just can be a nightmare. And I've heard the stories, and I know it can be pretty bad. But what I've heard about what you guys are doing is you're trying to really kind of flip the script on this thing and make it a positive experience for everybody. And I'm anxious to find out what you guys are doing. But before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourselves to our audience and tell us a little bit about your experience and what your background is.
Sure. Thanks, Ernie, for having us. It's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Alan Tzvika Nissel. I have been in real estate for a very long time. My grandfather brought my family here to Los Angeles. My father after him was in real estate, and I'm a third generation Nissel to be involved in real estate in Los Angeles. Over the years, I have also taught law at Pepperdine Law School. Mm-hmm. And since I would say June of last year, started working in this space, the construction defect claims management space.
Very interesting. Awesome. All right. And Richard?
Hey, Ernie. So Richard Shamooilian. I have very deep background in real estate development, namely office for most of my career, and moved into multifamily somewhat more recently, call it about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So obviously have deep experience in that world and have kind of parlayed that into what we'll talk about here. So you mentioned not having a lot of experience in the construction defect world and not having a lot of deep knowledge. First of all, I think you have deep knowledge in everything. But more importantly, I think by the end of this podcast, hopefully we'll help educate you and your audience just a bit more.
Awesome. So, knowing from what I know in the claims industry, high level, what a construction defect claim is, give me the example of what a typical process may be for a property owner or some scenario, just like what would be a typical construction defect type claim that somebody has to go through?
Sure. So let's say you build a building in Hollywood, mm-hmm. and let's say you fill it up with tenants and you have a building full of rent-paying tenants, and all mm-hmm. of a sudden you have a water leak, right?
Yep.
So first thing you do is you call up your repairs and maintenance person to say, hey, can you fix my water leak?
Yep.
And the repairs and maintenance person comes back potentially and says, hey, this is not something I can fix because I don't want to ruin your warranty. This is a construction defect. So now you're like, okay, this has been escalated from a typical operating issue to a capital issue, and you have to figure out what to do. So hopefully you have a relationship with your general contractor who built the building. You call up your general contractor, you say, hey, we have a potential construction defect, please fix it. Now, by the time he gets somebody out there, because he's not necessarily super eager to get out there, some time has elapsed. And now you get into a discussion with him about maybe it was a design defect, maybe it was somebody, maybe it was the repairs and maintenance person who was there. And let's say you come to an understanding that you disagree and the general contractor doesn't want to fix it. So then you call up your insurance broker and you say, hey, I have insurance for precisely this issue. I have a constructed building. There's a defect in the construction. That defect has resulted in actual damage. Please help me trigger my insurance coverage.
Okay.
So now the insurance broker is going to file or make a claim to the carrier, the primary insurance carrier, mm-hmm. Depending on what the coverage is. That will determine what kind of process it is. If you have an OSIP, it'll be different than if you have a CGL, meaning if you have a owner's insurance policy, an owner's construction insurance policy, that'll be very different than if you have a third-party policy that comes through your general contractor, like a builder's risk policy. So now the broker tries to trigger that coverage, either because they have a relationship through the general contractor or through your own policy.
These are going to be complex. It sounds like this totally complex where if I'm a property
owner, we haven't even started.
Okay.
This is just
So I got this property. I buy an apartment complex or whatever, and all of a sudden, you mean it could be like the piping was done wrong or something happened. I'm getting leaks everywhere, and now I got all these tenants upset, or I'm renting out to these businesses in a building, and they're being damaged because they can't run their business. They got something going on. And then you're telling me you're going with these policies, and these policies could be a variety of different things in it. For a layperson who doesn't really understand it, or a person who just buys property, do you think a lot of people who actually buy insurance like this even really? I mean, we all don't really read the policies, do we? Probably when we sign an insurance policy. So you're telling me there could be a variety of things going on then, just like complex.
That's exactly right. So you find these problems, and like Alan was saying, you go through this really tough process, kind of putting the pieces together, and it's not for the faint of heart, even in that very beginning phase, but it actually gets significantly worse from that point forward, right? Because now you're in a potentially adversarial relationship with your insurance carrier, which we try to avoid to the extent possible. And you're trying to prove up something that you know is a problem. Your tenants are affected by it daily. You're having to work around it daily, and beyond everything else, you're dealing with loss of use. What does your coverage look like? What does your policy cover? What are the steps you need to take in order to make sure you're properly covered? What are ways that you can expedite the process, which is where we come in,
Okay.
the best way possible. We've seen several policyholders come across after about a year or more of the claims process, just not being able to find a path forward. And not saying that's for any particular
Not for
reason.
lack of trying.
It
Not
must
for
be. It
lack
must
of
be
trying.
stressful for these people. I mean, for the property owner, it must be completely stressful. Like you're like it's because I mean, we always know some people a car or a home or whatever, some of the biggest assets that people own, and then when you're talking a property like this, that's another big stressor for somebody.
Well, take a look at what's happening with the wildfires just by analogy, right? You have some people who've lost their homes, and unfortunately, they've had insurance, and insurance has been very beneficial to them and has replenished their loss relatively quickly in some cases. The hardest cases in the wildfire cases are the partial losses, not the
Wow.
total losses. And the reason for that is they're complex.
Wow.
What exactly happened? How did it happen, etc. And in construction defects, you have so much factual complexity. It's not like a car accident.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing here, is there's a massive need for something to change. And so, what got you guys to start AMPR? Like, what was the like? How did you guys kind of get that inspiration to kick it off?
Well, that's actually a great story. I'll be brief. But basically, I had a construction defect in one of our buildings, and it took us over 3 years to get through the process of resolving that claim with the insurance company. And throughout that process, Richie, who was my business partner, sort of helped me through the negotiating process. Because at every step of the way, the insurance company would be like, okay, we'll give you $1. I'm like, great. And Richie's like, hold on. Then the insurance company says, we'll give you $10. I'm like, great. Richie's like, hold on. And so it wasn't really to me as the policy holder, I didn't really have any clear understanding of what the actual covered loss was and how to go. And so it was really helpful to have somebody outside the process help maintain that perspective. And so when we were done, it was actually my 48th birthday. We were sitting together smoking a cigar, as we often do. And Richie said, you know what? This is something that we really did quite well for ourselves. In fact, he did it for me. Maybe we should begin doing it for other people.
That's an entrepreneurial drive. I've heard so many entrepreneurs out there start their businesses this way. When I started my company, it was like, I was working for an insurance company, and I saw like kind of an area that needed optimization when it came to field appraisal. And I go, you know what? I can do that better. Isn't it funny how often people find something that happens to their own life and said, something, I could try to find a way to make that better. And it sounds like that's kind of what you had. You had it happen to you, and you said, hey, let's start something.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the case here. And really, at the end of the day, it wasn't that the two parties, Alan and the insurance company, had a large disagreement. I just don't think that everybody had the facts. And so that was a big kind of breaking point for everybody. And I think that's what helped that particular case settle was being able to work with the right engineers and the right expert witnesses and get the right reporting done in order to give everyone from the adjuster to the TPA to anyone involved in the process a clear set of facts to work off of, right? And generally, what we've found is that first of all, file the claim, that process in itself takes
Mhm.
quite a bit of time. Everybody in this business seems to kind of subscribe to a certain cadence and a certain timeline, and this is just the way things are done. Part of our process is turning that on its head and
Yeah.
turning it on its head in a way that's beneficial for both parties, right? So looking to get to fair resolution quickly, that's our goal. And one of the ways we do that is immediately upon filing the claim, we go out and we hire the best possible engineers, the best possible experts to run through these projects and figure out exactly what is wrong and be able to provide, again, both sides, but obviously, namely insurance, who the claim is against, a really deep understanding of what the issue is rather than we have a leak in a building that's less than
Right.
10 years old.
Mhm.
Help us, right? That's one way of saying it. Or you can say, here is a 300-page document laying out where the leak started from, what the actual defect is, what the damages are, what the loss of use looks like,
Right.
all of the above. We give them a very clear picture. And at that point, they can decide for themselves whether or not
No.
this is something that's worth arguing about.
Well, you sounds to me like you guys are trying to be advocates for the property owner, but you're actually helping the carrier. And in many times, having worked in the obviously on the carrier side, that's my strength on that. A lot of times, this is adjusters may be overloaded. There's a lot going on. There's things are complexity, and there's just so many files. And I think there's not things get delayed not because of anything intentional, it's just because of time and resources and things like that. So, are you saying that on this construction defect side? You guys kind of work to try to bridge that gap and help speed the process, assisting
That's
them?
exactly right. Smart adjusters love us,
Okay.
Yeah.
right? Smart
Think
adjusters love us. We're feeding their file.
So, so,
think
so I saw on some of your material something about advocate, aggregate, and you had accelerate. And is that part of that process of like wrapping it all kind of in a bow, basically what you guys do?
Yeah, think about it like general contractors. General contractors, what do you think? They would rather work with the builders, meaning would the general contractors rather work with the owners or would they rather work with an owner's rep?
Mhm.
They
Because I mean, you
always
guys may know more. Obviously, if I'm the property owner, I don't want to be trying to coordinate this myself.
And same thing with the carriers. The carriers would much rather, we've seen, much rather work with a professional representative and project managers such as ourselves than an attorney representing a client who's angry, who's confused, who doesn't necessarily understand what is covered, what isn't covered, is out there for blood. So we act as this third party intermediary who really packages a claim. And we're only going to take it on because our credibility is on the line. We're only going to take it on if we really believe we can help and that there really is a claim. And if there is a claim, we will document that claim, present the claim, facilitate the claim, optimize the claim, expedite the claim, and it'll be better for both sides because at the end of the day, one element that is such a big element is being taken off the table, which is disputing the facts. Now we're just disputing coverage, which is important and it's not small, but at least it's a smaller argument.
Yeah. I mean, as a property owner on something this big, I wouldn't want to try to handle it myself. So like basically like as like the quarterback of this, managing the different players in the game of because I mean, how do you assemble such a network of experts to be able to handle it?
Our deep background in construction and construction law and insurance between all of our partners
Hmm.
has given us just a really deep bench and incredible network. And when you talk about aggregating, et cetera, you already know you don't have to be in construction defect to know the depth of the insurance company's kind of team and network. It's massive, and it's all there just waiting to be deployed, right? So you file a claim, the person you're filing the claim against, right, has the third party administrator, has engineers, has a full team ready to go, fully assembled. How many policyholders do you know that have a construction defect attorney, a coverage counsel, engineers, all of that great stuff ready to go at the time their claim arises. Hopefully, the average developer doesn't see more than one or two construction defect claims in their lifetime.
Hmm.
They don't have that team ready to go. They don't have that expertise. They don't have that depth. Insurance does. So what we're doing our best to do is take these policyholders and these developers out of this kind of out of this no man's land, I guess is the best way I can put it,
Uh-huh.
and put them on a path towards a fair and quick claim. That's all. That's the whole process, is putting them on the level with insurance.
Yeah, and from what I had read about you and what you guys are doing, it seems like you're trying and really working to remove the friction points of this process and try to be more of the to come to a quicker agreement and get things resolved. And I think that's a positive. Are there some examples, like giving some that you feel comfortable with sharing high level of just a hypothetical, or what a situation that would be, how it would work and how you've actually helped somebody?
All of our claims come to us in a very similar fashion,
Hmm.
which is that you asked me earlier, what does a traditional construction defect claim process look like?
Uh-huh.
So all of our clients began in the traditional path so far, which is to say they've had a claim, they complained about it, they submitted the claim, and there was a breakdown of communication between them and the carrier at some point.
Okay.
And then they come to us, they hear about us, and they say, I don't know what to do. Can you help? Right. And at that point, I'll give you an example. We had one case very recently. All of our cases are very recent since we're a young law firm, and one case came to us last year, the end of last year, and they made a claim to the insurance carrier. The primary carrier said, "We'll give you $20,000," and they said, "No, we think this is worth at least twice or three times that amount."
Hmm.
The insurance carrier said, we're closing this case because we obviously disagree. They come to us, and we start to negotiate with the insurance carrier based on a different set of facts. Because whereas the first go around they went to the claim to the insurance carrier with words, we went back to the insurance carrier with, as Richie said, 300 pages of photos, destructive testing, forensic analysis, accounting forensics. We gave them everything, A to Z. And now we blew through the primary's policy limits. We're negotiating with the excess, and it's many zeros added on to the number that we were talking about earlier, and it's still cents on the whole dollar of our client's loss, but at least now the client's getting the attention that they need in order to resolve the case, because they're bleeding right now. So that's a typical example where they get stymied at the beginning. They bring us on, and with the assistance of evidence,
Hmm.
we help them out.
Interesting, very interesting. Is there a way? I mean, do you guys work proactively? I know these are situations you said that somebody's already having a problem. Are there ways to proactively work with a person who's buying a policy, or maybe somebody bought an apartment complex, or they can prepare ahead of time? Do you guys work with companies that way, or I mean, property owners?
Yeah,
We
so
absolutely go ahead.
So that's funny you should mention that, because it's sort of phase two of AMPR, right? Phase one was just construction defect management.
Okay.
And what we found is that we're trying to build a baseball team based only on home run hitters. We want to fill up the whole baseball lineup. So we need pitchers and hitters, et cetera. And so what we're trying to do right now is to provide the assistance to our clients that helps them avoid these pitfalls to begin with.
Okay.
So whereas we used to just be a post-loss claims management company, now we've come around to being a pre-loss claims management company. So that means if you're about to build a building, it would really, in my opinion, benefit you to speak to someone like us in order to have an understanding of what your needs are and how you can match your needs to your risk management, to your insurance needs. So
Okay.
hopefully you can bring someone like us on there. It doesn't have to be us. If you have in-house risk management, that's great. But don't just sign and don't just bind coverage based on price. That if there's anything that anybody gets out of this podcast, it's don't just bind based on cost.
So you mean you got to really know what you need to insure for? You got to know what those policies say, and not just. I mean, you can get kind of in a way, if you don't really read or understand it, it could be, like I said, totally complex and not really.
Yeah. a lot of people go out and bind insurance simply to satisfy their lender,
Okay.
right? And so all they're doing is checking a box, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes you get lucky and that box is checked really well, and sometimes you get less lucky and you buy the cheapest policy and end up with coverage that really doesn't benefit you, right? So we learned pretty quickly looking at good policies and bad that
Hmm.
if we can advise people on the front end early on and honestly do so monetarily at a reasonable rate, it benefits everybody in that life cycle because if, God forbid, there is a bad construction defect claim years later on that
Hmm.
same project, then we actually have a policy that we can latch onto. Then we have a
Wow.
policy that we can work through quickly. If they're just checking the box, right, then our job is made that much more difficult when you fast forward to the actual claim.
So when you guys are, as we're getting closer to wrapping up here, I want to kind of get touch on this here. So you guys are, you're building out the bench. You got different people, expertise in different categories like that. If I'm a property holder or owner or something, where do you guys cover or specialize in? Is there any areas of the country that you focus on, or where are you? Where's the best coverage you guys have?
We have access to all markets. So
Okay.
so we're based here in Southern California, and that's kind of where we've gotten our start. But we have direct connection to just about every market and are fully set up to run cases throughout the country.
Yeah.
Um, we're generally not looking at single family projects where it's generally, I'd say, probably a 30,000 square foot building or larger
Okay.
falls more within our wheelhouse. But we actually advise all walks of life. We actually take calls from quite a few single family homeowners, and just kind of spend just a little bit of time guiding them just to
Right.
help out. But we're generally looking at larger commercial projects.
Interesting. Man, this is an interesting thing you guys are doing. Like I said, it's for me, it's a completely different world. I mean, like I know in insurance in general, I kind of have a ballpark idea how things go, but this whole construction defect is, I mean, when construction defect typically happens, is there a time frame usually it happens within, or is there a time limit of how old the building is? Does that have to be a new building, or what? Is there any limits on the coverage on that?
Well, in most markets, it's a 10-year tail
Okay.
for coverage. That varies in certain places. How quickly problems arise really depends on how poorly the building was either designed or built,
Okay.
and the materials that were used. Unfortunately, with COVID and now higher interest rates and all of that good
Hmm.
stuff, people have been forced to cut corners on price, cut corners on labor, all the above. So
Okay.
things that were once really beautifully and well constructed were then, in
Hmm.
call it the last 5 years, just kind of slapped together. And so if I have to make a prediction, a lot of these buildings that are wrapping up now are going to have problems arise quicker than you'd see in most scenarios.
Wow.
But
Um,
it's oftentimes 5 years, so it's between 5 to 10 years. So, that time flies.
As we wrap up, this is, like I said, it's been fun hearing about this and learning a little bit about something I don't know about. But as we wrap up, you guys are busy doing this. Is it taking up a ton of your time? You guys been traveling a lot, or what have you been up to?
Well, building a business takes time.
I know it does.
We're on the road quite a bit. I don't see my wife as and children as much as I'd like to, so I'll say hello to them here. But yeah, this is something we believe in deeply and really put all of our time and effort into.
Yeah,
So absolutely, this is taking up everything. We're traveling quite a bit, unfortunately not for vacation, but that happens later.
man. I know we talked before. We'd spoken. You said you did triathlons and stuff in your free time. You still able to get anything in on the road and do any
I
running?
think
Or
you can see the Iron Man
well, yeah, I
thing
see
back
that.
there. I'm not quite the Iron Man I was before, but I'm swimming, biking, and running quite a bit. Just not training for anything that intense.
Not an
But
intense. What do you got? We got signed. I'm looking over there. Guitar signed there, back there.
that's actually one of my old tenants. That's Linkin Park, the
Oh wow.
band
Do you actually
gifted
play? Do you play?
to me.
Do you play guitar?
If I don't know that you can call what I do playing,
Uh-huh.
right? But
Yeah.
I try to play
Okay.
and really enjoy it. It's that and the hard workouts are the two things that kind of de-stress
Yeah,
all of this madness,
that's cool.
which is great.
Alan, what about you, man? What do you do in your free time?
I do a lot of teaching. That's why I love this. I love taking very complex projects, very complex topics, and just teaching people, helping people understand very difficult things. And if I have even more time left over after that, then like Richie, I'll try to break my fingers on some guitar strings and
I see your
participate
guitar
in some
back there.
marathons.
I see
Yeah.
your guitar. Awesome. Man, it's been great having you guys on and hearing about this. And I know it's just the start of exciting stuff, things you got going. If somebody's interested, reaching out to you, wants to find out about more about what you do, what's the easiest way to get a hold of both of you guys?
AMPRconsulting.com is the quickest way to just run through. That said, if you have a way of posting our email addresses via a
Yep.
link
We'll do that at the bottom of the video. We'll post all that information as well, and also a link to the website, which will be great. So,
yeah, and AMPR is AMPRconsulting.com.
perfect.
Uh,
Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah, you got it. And
uh,
Ernie, what has there been? I looked for it, I didn't find one. Have you ever done a podcast where you turn the tables and have somebody interview you?
I have. I've been on several claims podcasts, and I've actually spoke at conferences before too, and talked about the auto side of the business. Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
it's time you do that on your own podcast. I'd be
I know.
happy to grill you with some questions, but
Yeah, it'd be fun.
I
We should
think
do
that'd
that
be a lot of
sometime.
fun.
That would be
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, it's been, gosh, been doing this since '96, so it's been almost
Wow.
a long time. And it's funny how the industry in our business, it's changed a lot, but it's still the same. And I'll say it from my perspective. Cars are more advanced technology wise. That's great. AI is coming into play. That's great. But when you have to have an estimate done, accurate repair cost, negotiating, and all that, it still comes down to one thing: is that customer service. And it really comes down. You're talking about policyholders not understanding their policy. It When you can give great service to a policyholder and you can be communicative and you're keeping people informed, I think the biggest thing is communication, and it probably same in your business you're at too. If as long as communication is going on and people are understanding the process, it relieves a lot of the problems.
Yeah, we make ourselves very accessible. We deploy technology where necessary to help people kind of keep up and follow along.
Hmm.
But we are very much reachable. Our team is a phone call away, so that communication is absolutely there.
Yeah, and I think that's super important because that's what helps that policyholder and helps everybody really involved in the claims process. So.
No question. No
Awesome. Well,
question.
hey, thanks guys for coming on, and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks,
Thank you
Ernie.
very
Looking
much.
forward. Thanks
All
for
right.
having us.
This has been Focus on Claims with Ernie Bray, President and CEO of ACD.